Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's Thursday evening, which means it's match preview showtime. And this Saturday, Neil Harris's Gillingham will take on Micky Mellon's Tranmere Rovers in Kent. Tranmere still, at the moment, clinging on to faint hopes of the playoffs. Gillingham, of course, still trying to just get themselves to a point where they can say they're definitely safe. It was a creditable draw for Neil Harris's men up at Stockport County during the week, a 0-0 draw, backs to the wall performance. Seen some comments from Stockport fans, seen some comments from Gillingham fans, but all in all, a decent result on a Tuesday night. Pleased to say, though, I am joined by a Tranmere Rovers fan, Ben Jones, who you will be familiar with if you watch Gabe Sutton's EFL debate. Myself and Ben are both co-hosts on that League Two show on a Thursday evening. So, Ben, first of all, hope you're well.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks. Yeah, I hope you all too.
Good. Yeah, very well. Thank you. Obviously, Ben is a Tranmere Rovers fan, so he is the man we're relying on tonight to get everything we need to know regarding Rovers.
Yeah.
First port of call is, like always, his last six in the league.
Yeah.
Fairly similar, to be honest. Ben, Gills have taken 11 points from the last 18 available. That's 3 wins, 2 draws and a solitary defeat. Tranmere, 1 point less, 3 wins, 2 defeats, solitary draw. If we break it down home and away, Gills have actually picked up in recent weeks. It's 4 wins bookended by defeats. Tranmere's away record is actually 4 defeats bookended by 2 victories. So 6 points from 18 on the road at the moment.
Yeah.
You've actually played some sides very near to us in the that we've played in recent weeks since the takeover that came about and the new players came together. You've actually played, looking at it, Bradford, Mansfield, Crawley and Hartlepool. And weirdly, your results against 3 of them teams, the first 3 that I mentioned, so Bradford, Mansfield and Crawley, exactly the same scores. Both lost 2-0 to Bradford and Mansfield. We both saw off Crawley by a goal to nil.
Yeah.
The only other one was Hartlepool. We beat them 2-0 and you drew 1-1. So again, there's lots of similarities in terms of the current form as well, where it looks and points to everything to say this is certainly going to be a tighter game than when you saw us off.
Yeah, I think that's for sure.
In the summer.
Yeah, I think when we played you earlier on in the season, you were struggling to score goals even more than we were. And you caught us on a rare day. We actually put the ball in the net. So, yeah, I don't expect it to be that type of game again.
Yeah, that was back in September. I'm just trying to find the fixture. And I think we was just at the start of our real issues in terms of goal scoring. It went on for a long, long time, unfortunately. And at that point, we thought, oh, it'll change soon, middle of August, we'll be absolutely fine. Remember that day, you were simply just better than us all over the park. You didn't have to work hard for your goals. But yeah, we're both predicting a very, very different type of game this time around. You look at Gills in terms of the form guide at the moment, certainly since the new group of players, I think we're 6th over the last 6 and 5th over the last 10, which is a much bigger sort of. I know we've had this debate with Gabe regarding Stevenage on the EFL debate show about, are they in crisis? Is it a blip? How many games do you have to have for something to go from a blip to a crisis? But 10 games, obviously, as an outsider looking in at Gillingham, you must be thinking, yeah, they're a completely different stock.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually watched this game last night against Stockport, so just got a little bit of an idea. And I think the main thing that struck me was that kind of although Stockport dominated that game, I think Gills looked a lot more organised than they did back when we played you kind of in September. I mean, I think Stockport away, when they've got their kind of 10,000 fans or whatever it is they get in, you're going to be under pressure. There's a lot of noise, the expectations on the home team, and I think Gillingham did a really good job of managing Stockport and keeping kind of the more creative players out of the game. Like, I remember making a comment about Sarcevic not really being in the game at all. And he's
not man of the match, though, didn't he? By the home crowd,
yeah,
I found very, very strange.
I mean, the player for Stockport who had the most ball was Neil Byrne, and if you're a Gillingham, coaching member of staff, the person you want to have the ball on the Stockport team is Neil Byrne, because he's not going to do anything with it, which is pretty much what happened.
Yeah, and this is the point I was trying to make. And I think I likened it to a game that we played against MK Dons a couple of seasons ago in League One, another team that likes to keep the ball, but almost passes for passes' sake. I know they completed 500 passes or whatever, but you've got to look at where they were completing them passes and how many of them were completed by their three centre-backs and their defensive midfielders.
Yeah, for sure. And they only really had, what, 2 or 3 chances that were proper chances. It's not like they were carving you open non-stop and, unlucky and this, that, and the other. I think a 0-0 was a fair reflection of that game. If they had scored, it might have gone different. If Gills had to come out at the back at all and open up a little bit. But that didn't happen. So,
No, of course, it's one of them games where we're set up, and if they score first 20 minutes, it becomes a much longer night, doesn't it? Because, like you say, then you have to take more chances, and you then become more open naturally. But we was able to stay in our shape. But yeah, it's good to hear that you actually watched it and get sort of an outsider's perspective rather than just a Gills fan or a Stockport supporter, because obviously there's a degree of bias from both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So Ben's been doing his homework, a bit of scouting ahead of the game there, Gills fans. Obviously, the main purpose of this, Ben, is to talk about Tranmere Rovers, because we want to find out about them. We had another fan on back in the summer when you beat us 3-0 that we've already sort of touched on. Playoffs promotion is always the aim for Tranmere Rovers in League Two, I believe.
Yeah.
So my first question, assuming the playoffs are slightly out of reach, and I know they're not in terms of games left to play and points, but we've spoken on Gabe's show, and you seem to think that you've probably got a bit much to do, not playing well enough. So hypothetically speaking, you miss out. Is Micky Mellon then still the man next season, or does it depend on how these final games go before you make a decision?
It's a really tough one, because I think even last season when we finished on 75 points and, narrowly missed out in the playoffs by, I think, 2 points it was, the way we played pretty much all season, there's the odd exception to it, but the way we played was just, it's boring, it's attritional. We kind of grind teams down by outworking them. And the only time we really saw any level of excitement was kind of when we played sort of the footballing sides at home. So if we had, a Mansfield or a Swindon come to Prenton Park and they tried to pass the ball, and that just played straight into our hands because, we've got a really energetic team, so we press very well. And we were dispossessing them both, and we ended up scoring 3 against both of them at home last year, even though they were good sides, because they kind of just played right into our hands. And the thing we've struggled with both last season and this season more, whenever there's been a team that's a bit more direct, a bit more physical, but the onus is a bit more on us, it's kind of a stalemate, because we're not going to open up and try and carve teams apart. So it just ends up whoever scores first will win, pretty much. We've got a very strong back four, so that if we do take the lead, teams are going to find it very difficult to break us down, as Stevenage found the other week when we went there. I think they were playing like 4 forwards at the end of that game and lumping the ball forward non-stop, and they probably had 1 chance all game of any note. So I think with regards to Mellon, with that in mind, it's kind of, with that style of football, you almost have to be getting promoted to justify it.
Yeah.
I think if you're playing attacking football, if you're playing a bit more possession based, it's a bit more exciting, then you can kind of live with maybe just about missing out on the playoffs, as it looks like we will this year as well.
Because you've got to go some, haven't you, to meet, if
to match
last year's total, you're looking
at. We do have probably the easiest on paper fixture list of anyone in the league. We've only really got Carlisle, Northampton and Swindon of teams in the top half left to play.
But you still need 27 points from 11 games to get to last season's tally. That's huge.
I think, like I was saying on Gabe's channel, I think we'll finish top half, but just a little bit short of the playoffs. But realistically, we're probably going to be a few points down on last year. So you kind of look at that, the style of the football, the fact that we've got one of the most expensive season tickets in the league, and all those things kind of add together, and something will have to give somewhere. And I think Mellon's contract runs out at the end of the season, sort of end of May. So, pre-season we were sold kind of this big dream of, we're going to play attacking football, we're going to not care if we concede a load of goals. We're gonna, go gung ho kind of thing. And in pre-season, when we played some pretty good teams, like we played Hearts, we lost 2-1 to them, but we played this kind of 3-4-3 with a very high press, where the kind of the wing backs were almost joining the strikers and making it a front five when we were defending. So we were really pressing from the front. And I remember sending Gabe a picture of us pressing in that game, and the two wing backs were both in the final third when the opposition had the ball. So that was kind of what we were expecting coming into the season. And I think it lasted like 2 games of the league proper. We played Stevenage on the opening day and they beat us 2-1, but to be honest, it should have been 6 or 7. They absolutely tore us apart. And I don't know if that's kind of spooked Mellon, who's gone, maybe we don't have the squad to do this. But I don't know if Stevenage were the best example, because they play such a direct game that they can beat the press that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they almost just take that press out of the
game,
don't they?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They just kind of hoof it up, aren't they? And but yeah, we were sold this dream of attacking football in the summer. It hasn't really materialised. They've just announced a couple of days ago that they're putting season ticket prices up another 5%. So that the cheapest adult season ticket's about 400 quid. Yeah. And when you bear in mind that we're in one of the poorest areas in kind of League Two in terms of the region, it's a bit of a strange one. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure on the owners to change the manager, even if there isn't necessarily anyone who stands out that could replace him. Because unless you kind of push the boat out and go for a Danny Cowley or a Carl Robinson, or someone out of League One who's got pedigree, who's got promotions, this, that, and the other, who you're really going to go for? That's definitely an upgrade on Micky Mellon, who's won, I don't know how many promotions, 6, 7, 8. So I think that's a tricky one for them, but they're going to have to react in some ways to kind of live up to some of the promises they've been making. I suppose
I've written down here you've only scored 35 goals in the league. I know, coming from a Gills fan, I mean that's prolific, but it's not a tally that gets you into the playoffs or the top 3, is it? A goal a game. I think you scored 22 at home in about 18 games. So clearly on the travels, it's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's a little bit better at home because we generally have more possession at home, and I think the main strength we have is our 2 fullbacks are both exceptional for this level. I mean, in my slightly biased opinion, they're the 2 best fullbacks in the league. But where we've struggled is we haven't got a centre forward who can, capitalise on that. So we'll be putting all these crosses in the box. We'll flash the ball across the penalty spot, the 6-yard box, and then there's no one there. And even when there is, Kane Hemmings, who's kind of, I guess, our main striker this year, he's only returned 8 goals, of which at least 2 have been penalties. So when you've got these fullbacks who are putting all these crosses in and your main strikers 8 goals, it really does, that's where you're going to have your issues with the goal return. So I think the kind of hope for next year would be that we can fix that. But in terms of this year, it's why we're so inconsistent. We've got, let's say, I think it's the joint second most clean sheets in the league with 15. Built on the back of a very strong back four, but we just can't put a run of results together because we don't score enough goals. So,
I looked when I was looking at the Gills in the last 10 and the last 6 and noticed I think you're sort of just in around mid-table for both, which obviously mirrors the season in its entirety at the moment. And that was the thing that noticed me. It was different colours every time. It was green win, grey for a draw, then a red for a defeat, and a couple of wins, 2 defeats, a draw. It was very sort of stop-start and up and down. And yeah, like you say, you look at all them teams that are in and around the top places, the Sam Hoskins and is it Christian Dennis at Carlisle scored loads of goals. Andy Cook's another one at Bradford. If you're looking at if Hemmings has scored another 6, 7 goals, you're probably banging on the door of the playoffs at very least. And it's listening to you, Ben. There seems to be loads of similarities to Gills. Obviously, defensively, we've been solid all season. I mean, you beat us 3-0. I think only Salford have beaten us by more than 2 all season as well. our goal scoring issue was far greater up until the takeover in December. And even now, I think we still only got 21 in the league with 12 games to go. So we'll do well to end up with, 40 league goals, I'd imagine, this season. And that's probably a big ask as well. But there certainly do seem to be some similarities. You've mentioned your fullbacks as being potentially the best two in the division as a pair. My next question is obviously the nature of the beast at this level as well, that you generally lose players if they have a good season. Is that another concern? And obviously we have to talk about Ethan Bristow and Josh Dackler's Cogley, because Cogley for me was outstanding in the reverse fixture, absolutely tore us apart.
Yeah, well, I think we, with regards to those two, we did have bids for both of them in January. And I think at that stage, the club, with what I'm talking about with all this context of selling the dream kind of thing, I think if they'd have sold them then midway through a season, which probably ends any chance of a playoff push, they couldn't afford that sort of PR disaster. So they rejected bids from Stockport for Cogley, which was 300,000, I believe. And then they rejected bids out of League One for Bristow from.
So is that why they went in for Noyle then after? Is that
yeah,
why
they went in
signed
for him
Noyle?
after Cogley, yeah. And then I think Port Vale offered a lot of money for Bristow, 500,000, as well as another club. I'm not too sure who the other club was. But I think the difference between those two is Bristow's got 2 more years on his contract. And from what I gather, the feeling is that if we keep him into next year and we start next season better and we're sort of pushing up the league a bit higher, then really we should be commanding a fee of more like $1 million for him. So I think that's currently where they're at with Bristow, unless anyone gets up to those kind of numbers where, it's too good to turn down.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, a bit like, I guess, was it Wimbledon had with Assel? They sold him for $1 million, even though he was kind of integral to their season. So yeah, I think I probably expect he'll stay in the summer, but then we'll sell him in the January, unless we're doing very well and we're kind of top 4 or 5 or something next year. But on the flip side with Cogley, unfortunately, he's out of contract in the summer. So if we'd have gone up, I think he would have stayed, but we're not going to. So I expect he'll go to kind of a good League One team. I was speaking to Gabe about this, and you've got the likes of MK Dons who need a rebuild and have plenty of money. So I expect he'll go somewhere like that.
That might not be a League One team, though.
Well, no, but that kind of team, if they do stay up, because he's not going to go to a League Two team.
No, of course.
That's for definite. I mean, I think he's 26, and he's relatively widely regarded as the best in the league, the best right back. So he should get a good League One move somewhere, which is a shame for us. But at the same time, it sounds like we've already lined up his replacement. So it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of the nature of the beast down in the lower leagues, isn't it?
Has to be, yeah, doesn't it? As soon as someone has a good 6 months or a good season, then the vultures start swirling, don't
I think
they?
it's also a good sign of kind of the recruitment policy that we swapped to, because when we kind of had back-to-back promotions out of the National League up into League One, we were using probably the oldest squad in League Two at that time. And we've since been sort of cherry-picking players that have not quite made the grade at Premier League and Championship academies. So Cogley's come out of the Birmingham Academy, Bristow, the Reading Academy. Leo Connor, our centre mid, he came from the Celtic Academy. All these kind of players we're picking up, trying to develop them, and then either they carry the club forward or they improve on a personal level, and then we can make some money from them. And I think that's the way it's kind of got to be at, down in League Two level, unless you're a Salford or a Stockport who have someone, funding everything basically.
Well, dare I say it, maybe even us now, because we're still not quite sure how rich our American is, to be quite honest. But I think we'll know probably more in the summer in terms of what our pulling power potentially could be.
Yeah. So I think on the whole, it's kind of with the playoff thing, it's a faint hope rather than an expectation now, I'd say.
Yeah, it looks like it'd have to take a very good run, and a couple of teams also dropping off the edge of a
Yeah.
cliff a little bit. And we, like you say, we've already discussed this plenty of time on Gabe's show. I think it's now the top 8. I think it's 7 from
Yeah.
8 that stay in the top 7 in no particular order at the
No.
moment, because it's just too tricky to try and
Yeah.
estimate it, because it changes on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Seems to be every team that I big up then has an absolute horror show the next
Yeah, well,
few
I've been
weeks.
doing this with Stockport for ages, and now the last, was it 3 games they've not won.
I think they've
So they
scored a
kind
goal
of
either.
slipping away from that top 3 challenge. So yeah, it's so competitive from between kind of 2nd and 8th, isn't it? That they could all finish anywhere in that order, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. It'd be interesting to watch from afar, and hopefully with no pressure of
Yeah.
a relegation battle for the last portion of it, at least from a Gills perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, back to Saturday more immediately. We're recording this on a Wednesday night, so we don't know in terms of press conferences or anything
Yeah.
like that if there's any injuries. But how do you imagine Mellon will line you up come 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon? Because it looks like you play 4-4-2 in the main.
Yeah, we've been playing 4-4-2 for most of the season. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Kane Herrings will be injured for the game. He's missed the last few. So it's unlikely that he'll play. The big question is whether Kieran Morris will come back into the team. He generally plays on the right wing as like an inverted winger. He's a left footer. And he's pretty important to the way we play because he's essentially very good at long range shots. So what we tend to find is that the opposing fullback will make sure he can't cut in on his left foot and pop those 20-yard shots off. But that plays into our hands because it kind of leaves the overlap for Cogley. So
create space for him then and get on the outside, of course.
It's when Morris plays, it's kind of you choose in between. Do you block Morris off or do you block Cogley, because you can't do both? But when he's not playing, we're just nowhere near as effective down that side. So he's missed the last 2 or 3 games, and I think the hope would be he'd come in. But as you say, we've not heard kind of the midweek update on that.
No.
So that would be the only change I'd maybe expect from the team we put out last week. Although we possibly had a couple injuries that have not from that game that I've not heard on. Paul Lewis and Brad Walker both went off injured.
Okay.
So they may end up having to drop out, but neither of them have really been kind of regular starters for us. So yeah, they were kind of brought in for that game as a bit of rotation to freshen it up. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them change regardless. But yeah, it'll be a 4-4-2. I think we'll know pretty quickly in the game kind of what we've gone down there expecting. Are we going for a draw? Are we going for a win by how high up the pitch our fullbacks go? If we don't Cogley and Bristow over the halfway line, then we've gone there for a draw or to try and nick it in the last 10 minutes kind of thing. So I think you'll know that pretty quick on Saturday. But I think for what to expect from us, you'll see a hard-working team that maybe doesn't have enough creativity in the final third, other than sort of Josh Hawkes on the left wing might pull Rabbit out of a hat, and he can score some really good goals. So he'll be kind of the danger man to watch for on Saturday.
Interesting. We'll have to see how it goes then. Yeah. So fingers crossed from our point of view that the right wing is not available, and then we only have to deal with that Chris Cogley only. I say. Again, same with Gills. The only ones that we know are those that are out long term. So Ben Reeves and Lewis Walker are both out with knee problems that are season ending. Unfortunately, Reeves is an ACL, and I think Walker's is a lateral cruciate ligament, which is apparently is the good one if you're going to pick one of them to do. And then Scott Cashkett, I think, could be out, groin problem, and Robbie McKenzie as well. We've not seen him for 3 or 4 now. So after Tuesday night, Ben, I've got absolutely no idea, because Neil Harris completely changed the system. We went to a back 3 to counter Stockport in the week. I think there was 4 changes from Saturday's draw at Harrogate. There was 2 full debuts for Ethan Coleman and Tristan Abrahams, both who I thought were very, very good on the night. Ethan Coleman, for me, was man of the match, shielding that back 3. Tristan Abrahams, I felt sorry for, because the centre forward, and he had to go and just essentially just do doggies for 75 minutes to stop Stockport playing out from the back. But I thought he did it brilliantly and absolutely run himself to a standstill. So that'd be nice to see him potentially playing a side that's trying to get on the front foot and trying to create some chances. So I'd imagine we'll go to a back four because we're going to have to be on the front foot because we're the home side, and that as a supporter base, we will expect that. So I think it'll be Glenn Morris in goal, who's been absolutely immaculate. I think we'll revert back to the back four that we've seen in the main recently. So that'll be Shea Alexander, Maxime, Connor Masterson and David Tatonda. I'm not sure whether Sean Williams comes back in because I thought Ethan Coleman was absolutely superb on Tuesday. So I'd have him in the holding role if we play this. What Harris has tended to do is play sort of a diamond, but then two of them able to spring wide when we've got the ball to make it a 4-4-2 to try and stretch the pitch. So for me, you can't play Coleman and Williams in that system. Tim Dieng, I think, will retain his place, as will Dom Jeffries, who both were very decent in the week as well. I think George Leslie has to come back in because we need someone to try and play in between the lines to create chances. I'd persist with Abrahams, like I say, for that very reason I've just mentioned. It'd be interesting to see how he plays in a team that's trying to be on the front foot and trying to stretch the opposition and get him behind. And I'd bring Ollie Hawkins back into the 11 as well because I just felt, and you watched it as a neutral, I know we ended up taking them both off, but I'd have been inclined, and I know Neil wanted to go to a 5-4-1 for the final 15 minutes to see out the point, but I'd have just been curious to see us go with Hawkins and Abrahams for the last 15 minutes because Abrahams would have had someone to play off. He's never going to be able to play off of Tom Nichols. So for me, I'd go with that front pair at the weekend. Probably be completely wrong. It wasn't one for Fan Hub on Tuesday night. Let's put it that way. I was miles off. Final question before I let you go, and really appreciate your time. Like I say, it's been a really good chat, and I think we've got a lot of information that we need as Gills fans. Is the dreaded score prediction? I've written mine down, so I'll let you go first.
I'm going to sit on the fence a bit with this. I think it'll be 1-0 either way.
We're pretty much on the same lines. I've written down head 1-1, heart 1-0. It's going to be a tight game, isn't it? We've spoken about you're only going along at a goal a game, but defensively you're pretty much spot on. We're pretty similar. We don't concede loads of goals. We've kept plenty of clean sheets, but we've had scoring issues all season, and we blanked in our last 3 as well. But it feels very different blanking in the last 3 when you picked up 2 away clean sheets and 2 draws, and you keep putting further distance between yourself and the bottom 2, which is obviously the name of the game for Gills up until the final game of the season. But yeah, I think we both agree that it's going to be a lot more competitive than the first game this season when we just essentially rolled over and let you do what you do.
I don't think either side will dominate possession or anything, and there probably won't be a huge amount of chances in the game. It'll just be, who takes that one chance, really.
Yeah, like you said, it could be Key who gets the first one and then is able to protect it and manage the game properly. So it'd be an interesting battle. Both teams have got people that might not be available who they'd like to be available. Thanks again to Ben. Been a brilliant guest and has given us a lot of information that we need. Gills fans, Tranmere fans, if you are watching, please comment down below and let us know what you think your team will be. Let us know your score predictions. Who, if either of us, will be smiling the most come 5 p.m. on Saturday night. Please keep liking, subscribing and doing all that you do. Like I say, Ben is a brilliant co-host on Gabe's EFL chat on a Thursday night. So go and check that out. Be back Saturday for Matchday Live in the ground, myself and Boz, and whoever else wants to come and say hello. And do not forget that these videos are in association with Art of Football. So if you're after any retro or vintage prints, hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and anything else, go and check out their website. The link is in the description at the bottom of this show. Be back Saturday. Until then, up the Gills.